words, it's easy for me to fall into the trap of, well, that's okay because everybody else is doing it. In fact, Isaiah has something to say about that. Isaiah is a prophet in the Old Testament. So flip back to the Old Testament, and we're going to go to Isaiah 58. Isaiah 58. And we're going to look at verse 9 through 11. So Isaiah is after the book of Psalms, and kind of in the middle-ish last part of the Old Testament there in the book of the prophets. Isaiah 58, verse 9. Check this out. And then you shall call, and the Lord will answer. And you shall cry for help, and he will say, here I am. And then God will say, if you remove the yoke from among you, if you remove the yoke from among you, the pointing of the finger, the speaking of evil, if you offer your food to those who are hungry and satisfy the needs of the afflicted, then your light shall rise in the darkness, and your gloom shall be like the noonday sun. And the Lord will guide you continually. Look at that first part, the middle of verse 9. If you remove the yoke from among you, the pointing of the finger, the speaking of evil, if you offer food to the hungry and satisfy the needs of the afflicted, then your light shall rise. I need 2 volunteers. 1, Brittany 2. Actually, I need one more. Maddie, come on up here. Oh, well, that's right. All right. So these, you guys are going to be cattle. So welcome, cattle. Now, this is the way that cattle work. Cattle are very independently minded and kind of often work on their own accord. And so, if I were a farmer and I wanted them to do something, and I was standing back here on, come here, cow. If I were standing back here on my wagon and I would say, cows, do stuff, the chances of them doing the same thing is not good. And so, what you need, come back here, cows, come back here. Stand there, good. What you need is a good yoke. Come here, yoke. Come here, yoke. And essentially what the yoke would do is put one arm around one and get really close to the cattle. And what the yoke would do is that it would make it so that the cows always moved in the same direction. And so if I wanted something to be done, if I wanted the cattle to go left, I would just simply pull on the yoke, and both cows would go, come back here, cows. Whoa, cows, whoa! Or if I want the cows to go right, I would pull right, and the cows would go right. Now, come back here, come back here. Now, most of the time, you can see how this is a really beneficial thing. But the problem is that if the yoke or the cow or one of the cows decided to go towards the cliff, cattle, Brittany, come back here. Oh, you're going towards the cliff? No, that's not. Both cows would have to go. Are you following me? Because the yoke always linked them together. Always. Like it was impossible. Yeah, you guys are all going to die. It was not my fault. Actually, hey, Cal, get back over here. Quit messing around, Cal. So wherever one would go, the other would have to go because the yoke is the thing that kept them together. All right, so give it up for our cows and yoke. And maybe it's not like the big stuff. Maybe it's not the big stuff. Maybe it's just like the pointing of the finger. You know what I mean? Maybe it's just that, well, if you didn't do this, and if you weren't such a, and if you didn't, and if you, when we go down that road, of it's always somebody else's fault. It always leads to the same place. Or maybe your thing is like you're yoked to people who are always talking bad about others. Like, are you in a place in your life where you find yourself constantly surrounded by drama? If so, look at who you are yoked with. Look at the direction that these group of people are going. Ask yourself, is this really the way that I want to go? Is this really how I am going to be a living sanctuary in the world if I continue to yoke myself to people who are going in this direction? Think about that. Think about all the drama that surrounds you in your life, right? could you do differently? You know, so often we think about love as being kind of like this emotional kind of thing, like, oh, I love you. Oh, I love you too. And that's true. Like, it's totally a part of it. But the other part of love is this. Love is always a weird ringer. Love is always a choice. Love is always a choice. Like, love is not just about what you feel. Love is about the choices that you make towards that person. So, for example, let's say that you're in a relationship with a friend of yours and you guys have had a blowout about whatever, and you're like, well, he did this, and he did that, and he did that, or she was like this, or she was like that. I want you to think, what would it look like if you were to choose love in that relationship? What would it look like for you to choose love in that relationship instead of the pointing the finger, instead of the letting the evil words come out of your mouth, instead of being yoked to that? What would happen if you tried something different? What if, instead of yoking yourself to that, like you got rid of the window frame and you saw a bigger perspective of God, that you actually saw a God who did something bigger than you are? How cool would that be? Love is a choice. Love is a choice. And the way that we go, the direction that we go, depends on the choices that we made. That's what it looks like. And so when the scripture is talking about, like, if you remove that yoke, look at it. If you take away the yoke of pointing fingers, if you take away the yoke of angry words, of hurtful words, if you start to feed people who are hungry, it gives us a way that we become a living sanctuary. It gives us a way, like for us to live out there in the world. Like so often, like people will come up to me and say, well, Joe, all this sounds really great. You don't ever tell us how to do anything. It's right here. It is literally right here. If you want to live this life that you see God in the midst of it, try not talking bad about people. Try that. If you want to see a life that is lived like in a God sort of perspective, try making something your fault rather than everybody else's. Try making it like that. And I guarantee you, your perspective of who God is will become bigger. It will become bigger. I want to tell you what happens when we start to live this way. Verse 10. The Lord will guide you continually and satisfy your every need in parched places and make your bones strong. And you shall be like a watered garden, like a spring of water that never fails. Satisfy your needs in the parched places. See, when we begin to open our view to who God really is, when we begin to live like that in the world, things change. Things change. And when we as a youth group family begin to live that way, things change. When we become people who don't talk badly about one another, things change. When we begin to live like people who aren't always pointing fingers at one another, things change. Here's the deal, brothers and sisters. We want this place to be different. Amen?
Amen.
In order for this place to be different, we have to act differently. We have to act differently. The things that go out there don't go in here. Are you with me? Like the way, if this place is going to be different, then we've got to act different. We've got to act different towards one another. We've got to choose love. We've got to go out of our way to extend grace to one another. We've got to go out of our way to extend mercy to one another. We, brothers and sisters, hear me on this one. We have to play games that we don't like. That is what it means to be a family. That's what it means to be a family. That we are willing to be silly and dumb in front of one another. Why? Because we're choosing love. Because we're choosing love. We're choosing love. And I don't know about you guys, but like, all of that stuff out there is great.